Watch is ended. The harbor is secure.
Thank you. Get some rest.
Alexandria, after sunset, does not collapse into darkness, but exhales slowly as lamps dim, footsteps soften, and a Roman city learns how to continue without announcing that anything has ended. Before you drift any deeper, if this qui, you're welcome to stay with us. Subscribing softly keeps this place gentle and lets these nights continue. Now, rest. Night reaches the harbor first, not because it arrives there more quickly, but because the warehouses notice it immediately. Stone cools, sound thins, movement begins to resist speed. These buildings were never designed to impress anyone. They exist to hold things still long enough for the world to decide what to do next. By daylight, the warehouses feel temporary, almost embarrassed by their own bulk. People hurry through them. Goods pass in and out with little ceremony. At night, their true purpose emerges. Nothing needs to move right now. Everything only needs to remain. Inside, sacks of grain rest against one another with the familiarity of objects that have shared too many seasons to bother with distinction. Amphorae line the walls in uneven rows, sealed and patient, filled with oil, wine, or something no one plans to argue about until morning. The air carries dust, salt, and the faint comfort of stored effort. This is the smell of work already completed. Labor changes character after sunset. Dock workers who spent the day lifting and dragging now move carefully, not because they are tired, though they are, but because darkness introduces consequence. A dropped jar at night sounds louder than it should. A mistake feels more public. Alexandria responds by slowing down. There is a quiet humor in this adjustment. A city that once fed half the Mediterranean congratulates itself for not breaking pottery in the dark. Power, it turns out, is easier to manage when it lowers its expectations. Lamps inside the warehouses are few and unambitious. They do not attempt to illuminate the entire space. They sit where accidents are most likely, offering just enough light to prevent regret. Corners remain dark. Alexandria trusts them to stay that way. Guards move through these corridors without urgency. Their job is not suspicion, it is confirmation. The goods are still here, the walls remain intact. Nothing has wandered off during dinner. This reassurance is repeated nightly and never announced. The absence of alarm is the only report required. Outside, the harbor sounds different now. Water laps gently against stone. Ropes creak in a language older than schedules. Ships rock without intent, content to remain symbolic rather than functional. No one urges them onward. Tonight is not interested in departure. The warehouses respond by becoming heavier, not physically, but emotionally. Each crate represents effort already spent. Each sack holds a decision already made earlier in the day. The harbor at night is full of completed actions, not ambitions. Somewhere near the back of one building, a clerk finishes counting by lamplight. His numbers move more slowly now, not because accuracy matters less, but because urgency has gone home. Tomorrow will ask for these figures again. Tonight is satisfied knowing they exist. Alexandria does not mistake this stillness for weakness. It recognizes it as stability. Roads connect the world, but warehouses prevent it from falling apart. Storage is a form of confidence. Waiting is not inactivity. It is preparation without anxiety. Doors remain open just enough to suggest trust. Nothing slams shut, nothing needs to. The city understands that excessive caution at night feels like fear, and fear travels poorly in the dark. As hours deepen, the warehouses settle further into themselves. They do not sleep. Sleep implies escape. They wait. Waiting assumes continuation. By the time the harbor grows quieter still, the lesson has already taken hold without being spoken. Civilization survives nights like this not by moving forward, but by staying exactly where it is supposed to be. The goods remain. The city lowers its voice. History continues working, even when it no longer feels the need to be seen doing it. After the warehouses have settled into their patient waiting, the city does not rush onward. It simply shifts its attention. Movement has slowed. Goods have agreed to remain where they are. Now Alexandria negotiates something more delicate than labor or storage. It negotiates visibility. Light does not disappear after sunset. It changes its tone. By day, light insists. It fills space aggressively, exposes everything equally, leaves no corner unexamined. At night, light becomes selective. It chooses where to exist. It accepts limits without protest. Oil lamps appear along the harbor paths and inner streets not as declarations but as compromises. They glow low, steady, and contained. Each flame seems aware of its responsibility. Show enough to prevent injury, show little enough to preserve quiet. Alexandria has learned that brightness carries weight, and weight should be managed carefully after dark. These lamps do not chase shadows away. They allow shadows to remain present, thick and layered, resting against walls and doorways. Darkness is not treated as an enemy. It is treated as a condition. Lamps exist not to defeat it, but to interrupt it briefly where interruption is useful. During the day, Alexandria displays itself confidently. Architecture demands to be seen. Streets advertise their importance through width and alignment. At night, the city releases this need. Being seen becomes optional. What matters is moving without incident. Lamps are placed accordingly, near steps where stone drops unexpectedly, beside corners where walls narrow suddenly, along edges where water waits patiently for a careless foot. Their logic is practical rather than aesthetic. Beauty would be wasted here. Safety will suffice. There is something quietly ironic about this arrangement. A city famous for its scholarship, its libraries, its ambition to understand the world, now relies on small bowls of burning oil to prevent bruises and broken jars. This is not decline, it is maturity. Alexandria knows what matters tonight. Each lamp controls only a small territory. Outside that circle, uncertainty resumes immediately. The effect is humbling. Progress shrinks. Confidence extends only a few steps ahead. People adapt by slowing, not because they are weary, but because the future has become shorter. Sailors returning from taverns recognize these lights instinctively. They are not invitations, they are warnings. This is where the ground changes. This is where water begins. This is where a misstep would echo longer than intended. Lamps guide without promising arrival. No one expects them to do more than that. The city would consider such expectations unreasonable. The harbor reflects these flames imperfectly. Light fractures on the water's surface, breaking into shapes that suggest direction without offering it. Anyone foolish enough to follow them would quickly learn that guidance behaves differently on water. Alexandria leaves such lessons to experience rather than instruction. Ships remain anchored. Their presence feels heavier now that light refuses to flatter them. Without gleaming hulls or visible sails, vessels become silhouettes, stripped of identity. At night, the harbor does not care who arrived from where. It cares only that nothing drifts away. Further inland, lamps grow fewer, streets narrow, light retreats closer to walls, hugging them like something seeking reassurance. Alexandria does not attempt to illuminate everything. It understands that excessive visibility invites unnecessary movement. Shops extinguish their lamps early. There is no profit in brightness after sunset. Customers have gone. The market has folded itself away. What remains is light for living, not selling. Inside homes, lamps shift closer to tables and beds, shadows rearrange themselves, conversations soften because voices now travel farther than intended. The city becomes acoustically aware. Sound begins to matter more than sight, and light supports this transition quietly. There is comfort in this reduced vision. Suspicion fades when everyone shares the same limits. Darkness evenly distributed feels safer than light hoarded aggressively. Alexandria has learned that imbalance breeds anxiety. Guards notice the change immediately. Their patrols adjust, they stop scanning distance and begin listening. Lamps become markers rather than tools. Between one flame and the next, authority relaxes slightly. The city does not vanish in darkness, it simply waits to be noticed again. What these lamps do not do is equally important. They do not commemorate victories. They do not display wealth. They do not proclaim order. Their presence is almost apologetic, as though they are aware they exist only because people still need to move carefully. This restraint reflects confidence. Alexandria does not fear what it cannot see. It trusts what it built during daylight to remain in place through the night. Walls do not wander. Streets do not rearrange themselves. Warehouses continue waiting. Lamps are additions, not safeguards. Occasionally, a flame sputters. Someone adjusts the wick. Light steadies again. Crisis averted. No record will mention this moment. None needs to. History is preserved nightly through gestures too small to deserve attention. As hours deepen, fewer lamps remain lit. Those that persist grow more important. Each one marks a place where continuity matters. A doorway still active, a corner still dangerous, a path still in use. Alexandria's night map redraws itself slowly, erasing ambition and highlighting necessity. People moving through this landscape accept the limits without complaint. They know where to walk. They know where not to. Familiarity replaces confidence. This is a quieter form of knowledge. Children half awake notice the lamps without understanding their purpose. Light becomes reassurance rather than information. Parents know this and leave flames burning low, even when they would prefer darkness. Complete absence feels too final. Alexandria favors moderation even in obscurity. The sea beyond the harbor accepts the light without interest. It reflects briefly, then dissolves it. The Mediterranean has no need for guidance. It has existed long enough to navigate itself. Alexandria respects this and keeps its lamps on land. The city's relationship with time shifts here. Night does not measure itself in hours, It measures itself in transitions of attention. Lamps turning down, lamps extinguished, lamps left alone. Each change feels deliberate, even when no one decides consciously. There is no romance in this light, despite what later centuries might imagine. It is practical, contained, and unambitious. Alexandria does not ask light to inspire. It asks it to behave. The humor, if noticed, is extremely dry. A civilization that once believed knowledge could illuminate everything now prefers light that knows when to stop. By now, movement has slowed further. Footsteps shorten, routes repeat. Lamps become companions rather than tools. They do not promise safety. They promise something smaller and therefore more reliable. If you move carefully, nothing will go wrong tonight. Alexandria considers this an excellent outcome. Light continues its quiet work without expectation. Darkness cooperates. The city moves through its own reduced visibility with practiced ease. Part of Alexandria will soon sleep. Part will remain awake. Lamps accommodate both without favor. They exist between rest and responsibility, exactly where they are needed. The city does not ask them to last forever. Morning will take them back without ceremony. For now, they are enough. As the night deepens toward its middle, lamps hold their places, guiding without insisting, illuminating without promising arrival. Alexandria follows them not toward destination, but toward continuation. After the lamps have accepted their limits and the streets have learned how little they need to show, Alexandria reaches the edge of itself. The city does not stop here. It simply stands close enough to something larger to feel smaller without feeling threatened. The Mediterranean waits without signaling that it is waiting. By day, the sea participates. It carries sails. It accepts routes. It allows itself to be divided by intention. After sunset, it withdraws from cooperation. The water darkens into a surface that refuses detail. Distance becomes unreliable. Direction loses confidence. The Mediterranean does not turn hostile. It turns uninterested. Ships remain where they are. Their hulls rock gently, not out of impatience, but because water never quite agrees to stillness. Ropes hold with familiar tension. Anchors rest in positions chosen earlier with daylight confidence. No one feels insulted by this pause. Night sailing exists, but it is rarely polite. The sea does not reward enthusiasm after dark. From the shore, the water appears almost solid. Lamps from the harbor fracture on its surface, breaking into scattered reflections that suggest paths without offering any. These shapes do not invite movement, they warn against it. Alexandria understands this language without translating it. The irony is quiet and constant. A city that connects continents now accepts a boundary it does not attempt to cross. Not because it cannot, but because there is no need to. Whatever waits on the other side of the water will still be there in the morning. The Mediterranean has never been known to leave. Sailors who know the sea best are rarely tempted by it at this hour. They understand how darkness flattens judgment. Nets tangle more easily. Landmarks disappear. Familiar distances feel dishonest. Experience replaces ambition, and experience recommends patience. The city responds by stepping back slightly. Alexandria does not crowd the shoreline at night. It allows space between itself and the water. The harbor becomes a margin rather than a center. This is not surrender. It is courtesy. Waves lap against stone with a rhythm that does not care to improve itself. Repetition feels sufficient. The sea does not perform for an audience. It continues because continuation is its only requirement. Alexandria, which survives by similar means, recognizes the resemblance. Sound behaves differently here. Voices near the water lower even further. Laughter shortens. Words feel heavier once released. The Mediterranean carries sound outward and returns it altered, flatter, less personal. The city adjusts by speaking less. There is no romance in this exchange, at least not the kind people write about later. Night sea is practical. It is cold air, damp wood, and careful listening. Alexandria does not ask the water to comfort it. It asks only that it remain predictable. Somewhere offshore, a ship creaks as planks adjust to cooling air. The sound travels cleanly across the surface, unimpeded. No one responds. No response is required. The city notes the presence and lets it pass. At night, the Mediterranean shrinks conceptually. Not physically, but perceptually. The opposite shore might as well not exist. The world becomes what can be heard, smelled, or felt directly. This reduction is not frightening. It is clarifying. During daylight, merchants argue about routes and timing. At night, those conversations evaporate. No one negotiates with water in the dark. Plans retreat into memory. The sea becomes a reminder that not everything responds to effort. There is a subtle humor in how power behaves here. Empires argue endlessly over control, yet at night they stand quietly beside something that has never acknowledged ownership. The Mediterranean does not notice restraint. It simply continues. The smell of salt drifts inland, ignoring walls and streets, reminding the city of its proximity to something older and less invested. This smell does not announce danger. It announces scale. The harbor's lamps stop at the water's edge. They do not extend onto the surface. Light belongs to land. The sea prefers its own arrangements. This boundary is understood without signage. Alexandria feels calmer once it accepts that the sea will not assist tonight. Assistance would imply engagement. Engagement would invite disappointment. Indifference is easier to manage. People standing near the shore do not expect reassurance from the water. They stand because the city ends here, and something else begins. The Mediterranean does not ask them to stay. It does not ask them to leave. The guards listen rather than watch. On water, sight misleads. Sound tells the truth more reliably. A rope strain, a hull shift, a wave breaking unevenly, everything fits within expectation. Night remains cooperative. The sea does not reflect the city clearly. It breaks Alexandria into fragments and returns them unrecognizable. This refusal feels fair. The water owes no one an image. As hours deepen, even the idea of departure feels abstract. Ships seem content to remain symbolic rather than functional. They are proof of continuity rather than instruments of change. Alexandria does not object. The city understands that it does not own this water. It borrows access during daylight and returns it quietly at night. This arrangement has endured longer than any administration. It sees no reason to change. There is relief in this surrender. Without being acknowledged by the sea, the city does not need to perform. It does not need to justify its presence. It can exist beside the water without being measured by it. The Mediterranean after sunset is not hostile. It is uninterested. Hostility invites response. Indifference invites adjustment. Alexandria chooses adjustment without debate. Sound fades further. Even waves soften. The water seems to listen more than it moves. The city mirrors this behavior instinctively. Somewhere far beyond sight, the sea continues doing what it has always done, folding over itself, forgetting names, ignoring borders. Alexandria does not take this personally. By now, the harbor feels suspended rather than active. Everything essential has already been secured. Nothing waits to be decided. The night has no questions left for the water. The city steps back once more, content to let the Mediterranean exist without commentary. Darkness settles between stone and water without conflict. This proximity to indifference steadies Alexandria. It reminds the city that not everything needs response, recognition, or resolution. Some things simply continue. The sea remains. The city remains. Neither owes the other explanation. Night passes quietly between them, doing exactly what it has always done, long before anyone thought to call this arrangement history. After the sea has settled into its indifference, and the harbor has accepted that nothing more will be asked of it tonight, Alexandria turns inward. Not abruptly, not defensively. The city simply remembers where it ends. The gates do not announce themselves when they begin to move. There is no sound meant to carry far. Hinges turn gradually, as if checking whether anyone objects. Wood meets stone without urgency. Iron rests into place without triumph. Alexandria has never believed that boundaries need to be dramatic in order to be effective. By day, these gates feel ornamental. They frame motion rather than control it. Carts pass. Animals hesitate and then continue. People barely notice the threshold. At night, the same structures recover their original purpose, not as barriers, but as agreements. This is where the city will pause its outward attention for a while. Nothing about the closure suggests danger. There is no sense of retreat. The gates do not rush because nothing is chasing the city. They close because the day has finished asking questions, and night prefers answers to remain simple. Late arrivals approach without panic. Someone misjudged the hour. Someone stayed longer than planned. Someone trusted the lamps a little too much. The gate responds politely. It pauses. It allows passage. Alexandria has learned that enforcing time too strictly after dark creates more tension than it resolves. Guards stand nearby, present without posture. They do not square their shoulders. They do not raise voices. Their authority is procedural rather than expressive. They are here to witness closure, not to perform it. Once inside the walls, the city changes shape perceptibly. Streets feel shorter, routes feel fewer, not because anything has been removed, but because options have agreed to rest. Night compresses geography without effort. People respond instinctively. Walking slows. Detours disappear. No one argues with the reduced map. Alexandria has learned that resistance to contraction wastes energy better saved for morning. The gates continue their movement with unhurried confidence. They do not slam, they settle. This difference matters. A slammed gate suggests fear. A settled gate suggests trust in routine. Alexandria prefers trust. Stone walls absorb the cooling air and release the heat of the day slowly, like a memory that refuses to vanish all at once. Touching them feels reassuring rather than restrictive. The city does not feel enclosed, it feels held. Inside the gatehouses, small rituals unfold without comment. A guard adjusts his cloak, Another shifts weight from one foot to the other. Someone leans briefly against stone that still remembers sunlight. These gestures never appear in records, yet they are the true mechanisms of stability. Shops respond quietly, shutters lower, doors close with measured pressure, locks turn once, excess caution would feel anxious. Alexandria does not indulge anxiety after sunset. Sound changes again, voices soften further, footsteps echo less. The walls, now fully engaged, encourage discretion. The city listens to itself and approves of what it hears. Children sleeping inside the walls remain unaware of any of this. That is the point. Stability works best when it does not interrupt rest. Alexandria has perfected the art of functioning invisibly. Outside the gates, the dark waits without interest. Night does not press forward. It does not test hinges or strain locks. It has no intention of entering. The city and the darkness share an understanding older than either would admit. Inside, a subtle calm spreads. People feel it without naming it. The perimeter is settled. Nothing essential can wander off now. This knowledge allows attention to drift inward. There is a faint, dry humor in this moment. A city built on openness and exchange closes itself gently each night and suffers no identity crisis as a result. Alexandria knows that permeability does not require constant exposure. The gates do not isolate the city from the world. Air still moves, smells still travel, sound still slips through occasionally. Closure here is partial by design, enough to feel contained, not enough to feel cut off. As the last gate settles, the city does not pause to acknowledge completion. No one applauds, no one sighs. The routine has concluded successfully, which means it disappears immediately from notice. The guards understand that their success will be measured by nothing happening. If the night passes without incident, their presence will be forgotten by morning. This suits them. Movement inside the walls becomes increasingly predictable. Routes repeat. Shadows remain where expected. Alexandria feels smaller but not weaker. Reduced scale creates manageability. The irony deepens quietly. During the day, the city thrives on complexity. At night, it rests best when complexity simplifies itself voluntarily. There is no sense of finality here. The gates do not declare the end of the day. They signal a transition. Activities shift indoors. Responsibilities compress. The city continues, simply at a lower volume. Somewhere near a secondary entrance, a cart slips through just before full closure. The guard nods. The gate resumes its movement. No record is made. History will never notice this moment, yet it is exactly how history persists. The walls hold. Iron rests. Wood settles. Nothing dramatic occurs. This is precisely the point. Within the enclosed city, life reorganizes quietly. Bakers prepare for dawn, guards walk familiar routes, families sleep. Alexandria does not stop functioning. It refines its functioning. The gates now stand as punctuation rather than obstruction. They mark the pause between outward ambition and inward maintenance. The city understands the difference. Night accepts this arrangement easily. It always has. Darkness does not resent boundaries. It respects them. Alexandria remains enclosed without feeling imprisoned. The city has learned that limits, when applied gently, create freedom rather than restriction. The walls remember the day, but they do not dwell on it. They prepare to remember the night instead. The city settles further into itself, comfortable within its own edges. No explanation is required. Nothing more needs to be decided. The gates have done their work by doing it quietly. Once the gates have settled and the city has accepted its reduced outline, authority performs its quietest movement of the night. Nothing announces it. No signal travels ahead of it. The watch changes hands. This moment is so ordinary that it often disappears entirely. That disappearance is not accidental. Alexandria prefers transitions that do not demand attention. Power here does not rise or fall. It simply relocates. One guard steps aside, another takes his place. The exchange contains no drama and very little language. A nod, a pause, a shared understanding that nothing unusual has occurred. Most knights cooperate. Alexandria has learned to appreciate cooperation more than excitement. The outgoing guard does not linger. His posture has already shifted away from responsibility. He knows the city well enough to trust it for a few hours without his direct attention. He leaves without relief or regret. Night has already proven itself stable. The incoming guard arrives without ambition. He does not intend to improve the city. He intends to preserve it exactly as it is. This distinction matters. Improvement invites change. Preservation invites continuity. Alexandria prefers continuity after dark. They exchange information briefly. What was heard? What was not heard? Which shadows remained where they should? The report is short because the night has behaved. A quiet night produces a quiet handover. This is authority reduced to maintenance. There are no declarations to enforce, no crowds to manage, no future to organize. The present simply needs to remain intact. As the watch changes, the city responds almost imperceptibly. The rhythm of footsteps adjusts. Routes repeat with familiar timing. The guards begin walking paths worn smooth by repetition rather than strategy. They do not patrol aggressively. Aggression would suggest concern. Instead, they move with a practiced calm that blends into the night. Corners are acknowledged without inspection. Doorways are noticed without suspicion. Alexandria does not challenge its own shape after sunset. Sound has already become the city's primary sense. The watch listens more than it looks. A dropped object. A door opening where it should not. A voice carrying too far. These stand out not because the guards strain for them, but because the city has lowered its baseline so effectively. Most sounds resolve themselves immediately. A resident returning home, a cat navigating stone, a gust of wind finding an alley. The guards note these without reaction. Reaction is expensive. Alexandria spends it carefully. There is a faint irony here. During daylight, authority depends on visibility. Uniforms, signals, commands. At night, authority depends on absence. Nothing happens because nothing needs to. The guards succeed by remaining unnoticed. They recognize one another quietly, a nod exchanged, a shared glance confirming that everything remains ordinary. Night authority is horizontal rather than hierarchical. Everyone present understands the limits of their role. Time behaves differently for the watch. Hours do not pass cleanly. They stretch, they thin. The guards do not measure time precisely. Precision belongs to daylight. Night values endurance. They pause occasionally, not out of boredom, but out of habit, leaning briefly against stone that still holds warmth, adjusting a cloak against cooling air. These gestures ground them physically in a city that remains solid. The walls respond in kind. They do not echo unnecessarily. They absorb sound and return it softened. Alexandria's architecture cooperates with its watch, reducing the need for intervention. Inside homes, people sleep more deeply now that the watch has settled. They do not know consciously that it has happened, but the city does. Subtle cues ripple inward. Noise diminishes further. Movement becomes rare. The watch does not see itself as heroic. Heroism requires an audience. Night provides none. Their labor is invisible by design. Alexandria rewards this invisibility by continuing uninterrupted. Later histories may romanticize the night watch, vigilant figures standing bravely against chaos. Alexandria would find this amusing. Chaos is rarely bold enough to announce itself so clearly. Most nights remain quiet because nothing intends to disturb them. The guards prepare for boredom, not danger. They carry patience rather than anticipation. Their skill lies in remaining present without becoming restless. Occasionally, a sound lingers longer than expected. A footstep echoes, a voice trails, the guard listens, the city pauses, the sound resolves into familiarity, the city resumes breathing. No intervention required. This is how stability sustains itself, not through constant action, but through readiness that rarely needs to be exercised. Alexandria understands this deeply. As the night progresses, the watch becomes less visible still. Lamps grow fewer, shadows widen, the guards adjust without comment. They know where they are even when the city fades around them. There is confidence in this familiarity. The guards trust the city to remain where it is. They do not fear sudden transformation. Night has happened too many times to surprise them now. The irony sharpens gently. Daytime authority relies on schedules and declarations. Nighttime authority relies on habit. Alexandria functions because it knows when to switch between them. Somewhere near the harbor, a rope creaks as a ship adjusts. The guard notes it and releases it. This belongs to the sea. Night teaches discernment more effectively than training ever could. The watch changes again in smaller ways. A longer pause here, a slower circuit there. These adjustments are not recorded. They do not need to be. The city remains stable. Alexandria feels suspended between memory and mourning. The guards are part of this suspension. They keep the present intact long enough for the future to arrive without disruption. Authority here does not confront the night. It accompanies it. The watch walks alongside darkness rather than against it. The outgoing guards disappear into rest. The incoming ones fade into routine. No one marks the moment. Alexandria does not need to. The city continues breathing evenly. Gates hold. Lamps persist, faintly. Walls remember without judging. Everything necessary is in place. By now, the watch has fully dissolved into the background. This is its success. Alexandria does not require constant reassurance. It requires continuity. The guards continue their paths, indistinguishable from the city's own rhythms. Authority has become another layer of infrastructure, as quiet as stone. Night deepens. Nothing happens. The city approves. After authority has dissolved into routine and the watch has blended seamlessly into the night, Alexandria enters a quieter discipline. Nothing new begins, nothing ends. What remains learns how to take up less space, Movement continues, but it no longer announces itself. It negotiates. Footsteps are the first to change. By day, they are declarations. Each step claims ground, confirms direction, insists on purpose. Stone streets are used to this confidence. They endure it without comment. At night, that confidence feels out of place. The city notices immediately and adjusts. People do not stride after sunset. They place their feet carefully as if the ground itself were listening. Weight is distributed more thoughtfully, heels lift sooner, soles meet stone with restraint. Alexandria does not demand silence, but it encourages discretion. Sound behaves differently now. Without carts, animals, and crowds, every footstep travels farther than intended. A single misjudged movement can echo down an alley, announcing presence too clearly. The city responds by softening itself. Those who know Alexandria well adapt without conscious effort. Their bodies remember where stone dips unexpectedly. They avoid loose gravel instinctively. They slow near corners. Familiarity replaces visibility. Experience replaces certainty. Visitors learn more slowly. A careless step rings too loudly. The city notices, not aggressively, but unmistakably. Sound becomes a question. Who is this? Why are they moving like that? The answer arrives quickly if the footsteps adjust. This adjustment is not fear, it is courtesy. Night teaches that consideration travels farther than confidence. Alexandria has learned this lesson over centuries of shared space. Inside homes, the same discipline applies. Doors are closed gently, objects are set down rather than dropped. People waking briefly in the night move as though walls themselves might respond. In a way they do. The irony is quiet and precise. A city famous for its monuments, its visible achievements, now defines itself by what it withholds. At night, absence of noise becomes a form of presence. The guards from earlier parts rely on this transformation. They do not need to see everything. They listen. A sound that does not belong becomes obvious against the city's lowered volume. Alexandria collaborates by keeping its baseline quiet. Footsteps passing one another exchange acknowledgement without words. A slight pause, a shift in path, mutual recognition achieved silently. Social interaction reduces to essentials. Night removes the need for explanation. Animals participate as well. Cats cross streets without drawing attention. Dogs move cautiously, aware of the city's mood. Even birds rustle less. The ecosystem adjusts collectively. Sound at night carries memory. A familiar rhythm suggests a neighbor. A particular pace hints at profession. Bakers walk differently from guards. Late workers move with their own cadence. Alexandria reads these patterns without effort. The humor remains dry. By daylight, the city debates philosophy and law. By night, it evaluates character by how softly someone walks. This feels appropriate. Streets teach restraint through consequence rather than instruction. Narrow passages amplify carelessness. Wider avenues forgive slightly more noise, but not much. The city's design enforces behavior gently. Occasionally, a foot slips. A sharp sound follows. The city pauses. The moment resolves. No harm done. The lesson registers. Sound recedes again. Near the harbor, footsteps mix with water and wood. Dock planks creak softly. Movement blends into environment. Alexandria allows this complexity because it remains controlled. Voices are already gone. Now even breathing feels louder. People become aware of their own presence. This awareness does not create anxiety. It creates calm. There is comfort in shared restraint. When everyone behaves carefully, no one feels exposed. Quiet becomes communal rather than isolating. Alexandria understands this intuitively. The city does not enforce this behavior. It invites it. Those who accept the invitation move easily. Those who resist feel conspicuous very quickly. Guards continue their routes, hearing far more than they see. A mismatched rhythm. A sound out of place. Most resolve themselves without intervention. Night prefers resolution without escalation. Air itself seems to carry sound more cleanly now. Fewer distractions interfere. Perception sharpens without effort. The city refines attention naturally. This refinement brings peace. Without constant stimulation, the mind slows. People walking home feel thoughts settle into shorter loops. Alexandria assists rest simply by reducing interference. The irony deepens gently. Alexandria once prided itself on being heard across the world. At night, it is proudest when it is barely audible to itself. Inside sleeping quarters, even breathing feels like a commitment. People turn carefully, blankets shift slowly. Sleep is protected not by isolation, but by collective discretion. Footsteps outside grow rarer as hours pass. Those that remain belong to those whose responsibilities extend beyond rest. They move with purpose, but without announcement. Purpose no longer needs an audience. The city becomes increasingly abstract, defined more by rhythm than by shape. Sound replaces sight as the primary sense. This shift is temporary, but instructive. Alexandria realizes without reflection that much of its stability depends on this nightly agreement. Everyone agrees to matter less for a few hours. This shared reduction creates harmony. Streets feel longer without noise to compress them. Time stretches. Movement slows further. The city breathes evenly. There is no reward for being loud now, no advantage to haste. Alexandria has stripped the night of incentives that disrupt calm. Occasionally, someone pauses mid-step, listening, not because of fear, but because listening feels appropriate. The city responds by remaining predictable. Shadows lengthen, but they do not intimidate. Without sound, they feel passive. Movement defines space now, not light. The guards are aware of this change. Their work becomes easier as the city cooperates. They are not enforcing silence, they are benefiting from it. As the night deepens, footsteps become almost theoretical. Movement occurs, but rarely enough to define the space. The city rests inside its own stillness. This is not emptiness, it is compression. Everything necessary remains present, simply quieter. Alexandria does not disappear at night. It becomes implied. By now, the ground itself seems to expect careful contact. Stone receives each step without complaint when approached gently. The city feels responsive rather than resistant. People adapt fully. No one needs reminding. The behavior has become instinct. Night continues, supported by countless small acts of restraint that no one claims credit for. Alexandria rests not because nothing moves, but because everything moves carefully. After movement has learned restraint and sound has thinned into something almost optional, the harbor settles into a different kind of awareness. By day, it measures itself by departure. By night, it measures itself by absence of loss. Alexandria does not need the harbor to be active right now. It needs it to be intact. Nothing announces this shift. No one opens a ledger. No official count is taken. And yet the harbor knows exactly what it is doing. It is taking inventory without numbers, confirming presence without ceremony. Ships remain where they were left. Their silhouettes are familiar enough to be recognized even without detail. Hulls rock gently, not in anticipation, but in agreement with water that never stops negotiating its own balance. Ropes hold with the same tension they held an hour ago. Anchors do not ask whether they will be needed soon, they simply remain useful. At night, usefulness looks different. It is no longer about efficiency. It is about reliability. Alexandria understands this distinction deeply. The harbor is not expected to move the world tonight. It is expected not to lose it. Cargo stacked along the docks feels heavier after sunset, though nothing physical has changed. Weight becomes conceptual. Each crate represents effort already spent. Each sealed container holds a decision that does not need revisiting until morning. The harbor at night is full of completed actions. Dock workers who remain do not hurry. There is nothing to gain from speed now. Instead, they walk slowly, checking rather than carrying, confirming rather than loading. Their labor has become observational. A rope is still secure. A crate is still dry. A ship has not shifted unexpectedly. These confirmations are enough. The harbor does not count departures because departures are finished for the night. It counts what remains because what remains will define whether the city wakes intact. Alexandria values this quiet arithmetic. Sound here is minimal but precise. Water laps against stone, wood creaks as it cools, metal touches metal softly, occasionally, without urgency. These sounds do not indicate progress, they indicate continuity. The sea remains present but no longer dominant. It does not invite movement. It holds what it has been given and returns nothing else. Alexandria accepts this arrangement easily. Cooperation has been postponed until daylight. Lamps along the docks glow faintly, not to guide ships, but to prevent accidents. Light marks location rather than possibility. Anyone expecting inspiration from the harbor at night has arrived at the wrong hour. People standing near the water feel no pressure to imagine where these ships might go. The future has been set aside temporarily. The present has enough to manage. There is a faint, dry humor in this posture. During the day, merchants argue endlessly about profit and loss. At night, the harbor resolves the matter simply. If it is still here, it matters. If it is gone, it no longer requires attention. This logic feels comforting. Alexandria has always preferred systems that reduce anxiety rather than amplify it. Time behaves differently in this space. Hours pass without markers. No one checks how long the harbor has been quiet. Quietness itself has become the measurement. Guards move through the area with relaxed attention. They are not scanning for threats. They are confirming familiarity. Each outline belongs. Each sound fits expectation. The night has not rearranged anything. The harbor's scale feels smaller now. Without motion, hierarchy flattens. Large ships and small boats share the same stillness. Identity dissolves into shape. Alexandria finds relief in this temporary equality. The city understands the distinction often depends on activity. Remove activity, and difference becomes less urgent. Night provides this removal generously. Animals move cautiously along the docks. Rats slip between shadows. Cats observe from warm stone. They, too, sense that nothing dramatic is expected of them. The harbor's ecosystem participates in this agreement willingly. Smells shift as well. Salt becomes more noticeable. Wood releases its own quiet scent. The air carries reminders of work done earlier rather than promises of work to come. Alexandria absorbs this atmosphere without commentary. The harbor at night does not try to explain itself. It simply exists in a state of confirmation. Occasionally, a ship adjusts slightly. A rope creaks. Water shifts weight. The sound travels, then fades. No response follows. The city has learned to distinguish between change and threat. The lamps stop at the water's edge. Light does not extend onto the surface. This boundary is understood without instruction. Land handles light. Water handles itself. Standing here, one might notice how little imagination is required. The harbor does not ask anyone to project forward. It asks only to be observed long enough to confirm that nothing has gone wrong. This observation spreads inward. Streets nearby feel calmer. Homes sleep deeper. The watch relaxes further. Stability radiates outward from the harbor without needing to announce itself. The irony remains gentle. A city defined by connection finds reassurance in stillness. Alexandria has learned that continuity does not always require motion. By now, the harbor feels less like an engine and more like an anchor. It holds the city steady by existing reliably. Nothing more is demanded. The sea remains indifferent. The city remains attentive. Between them, the harbor performs its quiet duty, holding what has been entrusted to it. There is no sense of waiting for morning here. Morning will arrive when it chooses. The harbor does not rush it. Everything necessary has already been secured. Everything unnecessary has already left. Alexandria rests easier knowing this. As the night deepens, the idea of departure feels abstract. Ships become symbols rather than tools. Routes fade into memory. The harbor belongs entirely to the present. This present is calm, contained, and sufficient. Nothing leaves, nothing arrives, and yet everything important is happening. The harbor continues its silent accounting, confirming again and again that the city remains whole. After the harbor has finished confirming what remains, the city no longer needs to move or check. It turns its attention inward to something smaller and more intimate than ships or gates. Alexandria begins to listen to itself speak, and then decides to speak less. Voices do not disappear at night. They change their shape. By day, speech competes with traffic, labor, animals, wind, and argument. It stretches itself to survive. After sunset, competition withdraws. The city becomes acoustically honest. A voice released carelessly feels exposed, as if it were standing alone in an empty courtyard. Stone walls remember sound. Narrow streets collect it. Courtyards fold it back on itself. Alexandria has learned this not through instruction, but through repetition. Over centuries, voices have taught the city how to listen, and the city has taught voices how to behave. People lower their voices instinctively. No sign asks them to. No guard reminds them. The adjustment happens before thought arrives. A raised voice at night feels unnecessary, almost impolite, like knocking too loudly on a door you know is unlocked. Conversations do not stop. They compress, sentences shorten, meaning travels efficiently without decoration. Alexandria does not lose communication after dark. It removes excess. Inside homes, speech becomes fragmentary. Familiar phrases replace full explanations. Everyone already understands the context. There is no audience to persuade, no argument to win. Walls have heard these stories before. There is a quiet irony here. A city once famous for public debate, for voices raised in argument and applause, now finds comfort in half-sentences spoken close to the floor. Civilization has not grown quieter because it has weakened. It has grown quieter because it has learned when volume costs more than it gives. The walls participate actively. They amplify certain tones and soften others. A whisper travels farther than expected. A laugh escapes briefly and is pulled back immediately, as if embarrassed by its own enthusiasm. People learn these acoustics without measuring them. Guards moving through the city rely on this discipline. They do not need to hear words clearly. They listen for tone. A voice that does not belong announces itself through volume, not content. Night turns sound into identification. The city collaborates willingly. Residents understand the quiet protects everyone. It allows sleep to deepen. It allows mistakes to resolve themselves without becoming incidents. Alexandria prefers prevention over reaction. Streets feel narrower once voices lower. Sound had been holding them open. Without it, stone closes in gently. This containment feels appropriate, like pulling a blanket closer rather than locking a door. In courtyards, murmurs drift upward and dissolve before reaching windows. Lamps glow faintly. Shadows remain still. Everything conspires to keep speech contained and temporary. Arguments rarely survive night intact, not because disagreements vanish, but because escalation feels disproportionate. Raising one's voice would require energy better saved for daylight. Night encourages postponement without demanding resolution. Children half asleep hear voices without understanding words. Tone becomes reassurance. Parents know this and adjust instinctively. Calm is communicated not through explanation, but through restraint. Even laughter behaves differently. It shortens. It exits quickly and returns smaller. Alexandria does not forbid joy after sunset. It simply asks it to take up less space. The walls, in return, hold the city together acoustically. They store echoes long enough to teach caution, then release them slowly. People know that what is said loudly at night will be remembered longer than intended. This knowledge changes what people choose to say. Night speech becomes deliberate. Fewer exaggerations survive the dark. Honesty feels safer when spoken softly. There is comfort in this shared restraint. No one is trying to dominate the soundscape. Everyone contributes less. Silence becomes communal rather than isolating. The humor, if noticed, is dry and precise. During the day, people argue about ideas that claim permanence. At night, they argue about whether the door should close more gently. Alexandria considers this an improvement. Guards pass beneath windows, hearing fragments of lives without intruding. A cough, a whispered exchange, a soft lullaby. None of these require response. They confirm normalcy. Sound near the harbor behaves differently. Water carries it farther, flattening it, returning it altered. Voices near the shore drop even lower. The city senses that it is not alone in listening. Night speech rarely travels far enough to become public. It remains private, contained within walls that have learned discretion through age. Alexandria trusts stone more than memory at this hour. As the night deepens, even whispers fade. People retreat into thought. Inner voices replace spoken ones. The city transitions from audible to internal without resistance. This is not isolation, it is consolidation. Alexandria gathers itself inward, preparing for rest without abandoning awareness. Walls continue their work. They do not judge what they hear. They simply remember long enough to encourage restraint. This is enough. The city no longer needs to say much. Everything essential has already been confirmed by presence, by sound, by stillness. Breathing becomes the loudest noise in some rooms. People turn carefully. Blankets shift slowly. Sleep approaches more confidently now that voices have agreed to stay small. Alexandria remains awake in places, but it is no longer speaking outward. It listens instead, not for danger, but for continuity. Night approves of this arrangement. It always has. After voices have learned how to shrink and walls have accepted the responsibility of remembering what was said too loudly, the city turns to those who remain awake without apology. Alexandria does not spotlight them. It barely acknowledges them. And yet, night depends on their presence more than it admits. These workers do not think of themselves as belonging to the night. That distinction matters. They tell themselves, this is only for now, just until morning, just until circumstances improve, just until someone else takes over. Alexandria listens to these explanations patiently, knowing it has heard them for generations. Night labor begins quietly, without announcement. A baker lights a small lamp long before dawn deserves attention. Flour is measured carefully to avoid waste. Water is poured slowly, so it does not speak louder than necessary. Kneading becomes rhythmic, almost meditative, guided more by touch than sight. Bread made at night does not try to impress. It only needs to exist at the right moment. The baker never calls this a night profession. He calls it preparation, a temporary adjustment, something required by the day ahead. Alexandria allows the fiction. It finds the fiction useful. Elsewhere, a clerk continues copying figures by lamplight. Numbers move more slowly now, not because accuracy matters less, but because urgency has loosened its grip. There is no one watching, no one waiting impatiently. The work exists because it must, not because it is admired. These tasks share a common quality. They are invisible by design. Visibility would imply scrutiny. Scrutiny would invite expectation. Expectation would disrupt the calm. Alexandria prefers work that sustains without announcing itself. Guards remain awake as part of this network, but they are not alone. Stable hands tend animals that do not understand schedules. Dock workers check ropes one last time. Families sit with the sick or restless. None of these people consider themselves night workers. They consider themselves responsible. There is a gentle irony in this refusal of identity. Day work claims names and titles. Night work claims excuses. And yet night work persists with far more consistency. Alexandria relies on it more than it ever credits. Movement during night labor is slower, more deliberate. Mistakes feel heavier after dark. There are fewer witnesses to share responsibility. This encourages precision. Alexandria benefits from this seriousness quietly. Tools make less noise. Doors close more gently. Even effort learns to take up less space. The city has trained its night workers without instruction. They adapt because adaptation reduces friction. The humor remains understated. An empire that measures success by expansion depends on people who work, while insisting their work does not count as a full commitment. Night labor pretends it is borrowed time. In reality, it is foundational. Those awake at this hour rarely see one another clearly. Recognition happens through sound and rhythm rather than sight. A familiar step, a known pause, a shared silence. Alexandria becomes a network of partial awareness. There is comfort in this anonymity. No one expects praise. No one competes for attention. Night removes ambition from labor and leaves only necessity. Time behaves differently for these workers. Hours stretch without pressure. There is no crowd to respond to, no authority demanding performance. The work exists because stopping would create more problems than continuing quietly. Alexandria understands this balance. It allows night labor to remain unofficial. To formalize it would invite measurement. Measurement would introduce judgment. Judgment would disrupt endurance. Inside homes, similar labor continues unnoticed. Someone mends clothing by lamplight. Someone prepares food for the morning. Someone stays awake with a child who refuses rest. None of this is labeled work. It is simply continuation. Night labor resists classification. It exists between categories, between roles, between recognition. Alexandria tolerates this ambiguity because it produces stability without noise. The walls listen without reaction. They have heard these sounds before. Grinding stone, soft, scraping wood, a muted cough, a whispered calculation. These noises belong to maintenance, not progress. The irony deepens slowly. During the day, people work to shape the future. At night, they work to prevent collapse. Alexandria knows which effort is more reliable. These workers do not expect gratitude. Gratitude would imply visibility. Visibility would invite interruption. Night work prefers to remain unexamined. Fatigue appears gradually, but it does not overwhelm. Night workers learn how to pace themselves. Speed would invite error. Error would invite attention. Attention would disrupt the city's careful quiet. The streets cooperate. Lamps remain modest. Gates stay settled. Everything established earlier exists to support this phase. The city has prepared the night so that labor can continue without friction. There is intimacy in this work. Without crowds, workers become more aware of their surroundings. The texture of stone, the temperature of air, the rhythm of their own breathing. Alexandria becomes immediate rather than symbolic. This intimacy creates a subtle bond. Night workers feel connected not to institutions, but to the city itself. They work with Alexandria, not for it. The city does not reward this devotion openly. It rewards it by continuing to exist. Some night laborers look forward to daylight, others dread it. Daylight brings noise, supervision, and explanation. Night offers freedom within constraint. Hierarchy dissolves at this hour. Titles matter less. Everyone awake shares the same condition. This temporary equality does not threaten order. It reinforces tolerance. As the night progresses, workers begin to frame their labor as nearly finished. Soon enough, just a little longer, the fiction of temporariness remains useful. It gives endurance a shape. Alexandria allows this fiction to persist. It understands the importance of believing that effort has an endpoint, even when history suggests otherwise. Occasionally someone pauses, listening. Not for danger, but for confirmation that the city remains calm. The city responds by remaining predictable. As the sky begins to lighten imperceptibly, night workers prepare to withdraw again. Their labor will be absorbed into the day without acknowledgement. This suits them. The city will soon pretend that the night did nothing important. Alexandria knows better, but it does not correct the record. Correction would require explanation. Explanation would require noise. Night labor retreats softly, leaving no trace except continuity. Bread is ready. Records are complete. Animals are tended. The city survives another night without interruption. That is enough. After the last night workers withdraw without ceremony, and their labor dissolves into readiness for morning, Alexandria does not surrender to sleep. It would not know how. The city has never trusted anything that arrives all at once. Instead, sleep approaches cautiously, entering through gaps left between duties that never fully disappear. Beds are prepared quietly. Mats are smoothed rather than shaken. Cloaks are folded close enough to be reached again without searching. People arrange their bodies, not only for comfort, but for interruption. Sleep here is an agreement, not an escape. The city has learned this posture over time. Complete rest feels irresponsible. Complete vigilance feels exhausting. Alexandria chooses something in between. Eyes close, but attention lingers nearby. Breathing deepens in stages. Muscles loosen selectively. One part of the body rests while another remains ready. This division is practiced, almost elegant, in its restraint. The city does not fall asleep. It layers itself. Inside homes, lamps are dimmed, but not always extinguished. A low flame remains, not to see, but to reassure. Darkness without reference would feel too absolute. Alexandria prefers gradients even in rest. Children sleep first and most deeply. They have not yet learned how conditional continuity can feel. Their rest is uncomplicated. Adults sleep with awareness folded beneath it. A quiet readiness shaped by experience rather than fear. There is a faint irony in this arrangement. A city famous for planning, for foresight, for elaborate systems, rests best when it refuses to plan too far ahead. Sleep comes easier when the future is intentionally left vague. Outside, the streets remain cooperative. Footsteps are rare. Voices are gone. The harbor holds still. All earlier adjustments now serve a single purpose. They make partial rest possible. Sleep arrives unevenly. Some drift quickly. Others hover near wakefulness. No one considers this a problem. Alexandria has never demanded uniformity. Rest is allowed to be imperfect. People wake briefly without alarm. A sound shifts. A thought surfaces. They listen. Everything fits expectation. Sleep resumes. Interruption is absorbed without panic. The walls continue their work. They hold sound. They hold temperature. They hold memory just long enough to maintain calm. People trust stone more at night than intention. The city understands that sleep requires trust, and trust is collective. No single person ensures safety. Everyone contributes by behaving predictably. This shared restraint makes rest possible. There is no romance attached to this sleep. It is practical, negotiated, conditional. Bodies rest because they must. Minds quiet because nothing demands response right now. Some remain half awake by necessity, a parent listening for a child, a guard resting between rounds, a baker waiting for dough to rise. These people do not resent their condition, they accept it as part of the city's rhythm. Sleep becomes communal without being shared. Everyone rests knowing that others are not resting fully. This distributed responsibility reduces anxiety rather than increasing it. The humor remains dry. An empire that builds monuments to permanence sleeps in fragments, trusting that enough fragments will be sufficient. History suggests it is correct. Dreams, when they arrive, are subdued. They borrow from the day only what is familiar. Streets repeat themselves. Lamps glow softly. Water laps without urgency. Even the mind respects the city's lowered volume. People turn carefully in their sleep. Blankets shift slowly. Even unconscious movement seems to have learned restraint. The city's habits extend inward. As hours pass, deeper sleep spreads gradually. More bodies surrender. More thoughts loosen. Alexandria does not rush this process. It allows rest to arrive when it is ready. This patience is not passive. It is learned. The city knows that forcing rest creates resistance. Allowing it creates stability. The guards sleep in turns. Their rest is light, purposeful, designed to be abandoned easily. Authority sleeps differently. It never fully releases itself. Tools are left within reach. Doors are secured, but not obsessively. Preparedness reduces worry, and reduced worry improves sleep. Alexandria understands this psychology intuitively. The night holds steady. Nothing tests the city. This cooperation encourages deeper rest. Sleep expands because the environment allows it. People drift in and out of dreams without distress. Waking briefly does not signal danger. It signals continuity. Alexandria has taught its inhabitants how to rest without demanding perfection. The city itself seems to slow its internal rhythm. Air cools further. Stone releases the last warmth of the day. Everything aligns toward conservation. Rest here is not a right. It is a reward earned through order and restraint. Alexandria has earned enough to rest partially. As the night approaches its deepest point, the city exists in overlapping states. Some sleep deeply, some remain alert, some hover between. This complexity stabilizes rather than disrupts. The irony sharpens gently. During the day, Alexandria pursues ambition relentlessly. At night, it is content with survival. Sleep mirrors this shift perfectly. There is no signal for when enough rest has occurred. Bodies decide individually. The city allows this unevenness. Time is no longer measured. Only condition matters. Are people calm? Are sounds predictable? Are boundaries holding? The answers remain affirmative. Sleep becomes heavier where it can. Where it cannot, rest substitutes. Closing eyes without fully disengaging still counts. Alexandria is pragmatic about recovery. The city does not pretend this rest is complete. It does not need to be. Morning will not demand perfection. It will demand continuity. Breathing evens out. Muscles soften further. Thoughts slow. Alexandria settles into its most vulnerable posture without fear. This vulnerability is supported by everything that came before. Gates closed gently, lights behaved modestly, voices lowered, work continued quietly. All of it has prepared this moment. Sleep now rests inside the city rather than over it. It fits between responsibilities instead of replacing them. The night holds long enough for this to matter. Alexandria remains partially awake, partially asleep, balanced carefully between letting go and staying ready. This balance is not dramatic. It is sustainable. The city rests, not because it is finished, but because it has done enough for now. Alexandria does not wake. Waking would suggest that sleep ever claimed it fully. Instead, the city makes a final adjustment, so small it feels accidental. Night loosens its grip, not because it is forced to leave, but because it has finished what it came to do. Nothing announces this change. No sound arrives on schedule. No light declares itself new. The city simply begins to redistribute attention, releasing what it had been holding tightly and holding a little more loosely what no longer needs guarding. Those who slept lightly feel it first. Their breathing changes before their thoughts do. Awareness drifts closer to the surface without breaking through. Alexandria allows this half-state to linger. Transitions that rush rarely last. Outside streets remain quiet, but the quiet feels thinner now. It no longer presses inward. It rests. Silence stops behaving like a boundary and starts behaving like space. The harbor senses the shift without reacting. Water remains dark, but it no longer feels sealed. Ships do not move, yet they feel closer to movement than before. Possibility returns gently without invitation. Guards resting between rounds adjust without standing. Muscles respond before intention forms. Authority does not return yet. It stretches, testing its balance, confirming that the city remains cooperative. Inside homes, sleep changes depth. Dreams loosen. The mind begins to reattach to the body carefully, as if checking whether it is safe to return. Alexandria does not rush this process. It understands that forcing awareness creates resistance. The city has no interest in dramatic awakenings. Drama belongs to daylight. Night prefers continuity. Some lamps remain lit, though their flames no longer feel defensive. They are no longer guarding against accidents. They are waiting to become unnecessary. Alexandria understands when to release tools. Walls continue to hold, but they no longer feel enclosing. Memory remains, but attention shifts. Sound will soon matter again. Voices will return. The walls prepare to accept them without complaint. There is quiet irony in this transition. A civilization that prides itself on beginnings and endings spends its most honest hours refusing both. Alexandria slides through moments rather than marking them. The sky remains dark, but not uniformly so. Subtle variations appear, almost imperceptible, yet unmistakable to those who have learned how to look without expectation. Night thins rather than breaks. The city does not greet this change. It does not celebrate. Acknowledging transitions too loudly invites disruption. Alexandria behaves as though this has always been the plan. Night workers who insisted their labor was temporary now withdraw fully. They leave behind results without ceremony. Bread rests. Records lie ready. The city absorbs their effort without comment. Sleepers who negotiated rest between responsibilities begin to release vigilance. Some wake, some return to sleep briefly. Alexandria allows both. Uniformity has never been a requirement for stability. Streets begin to hold the idea of movement again. Not movement itself, just the idea. Corners feel less final. Distances feel slightly longer. The city stretches without standing up. Sound returns cautiously. A cough carried farther than before. A foot shifting. A breath drawn more deeply. These are not interruptions. They are confirmations. The harbor resumes its role as connector without acting on it. Routes exist again conceptually, though no ship claims them yet. Alexandria prepares to re-enter the world without announcing readiness. The sea remains indifferent, but the city no longer needs that indifference. The lesson has already been absorbed. Acceptance has done its work. Gates remain closed a while longer. Boundaries do not dissolve immediately. Alexandria understands that abrupt openness feels as unsettling as sudden closure. Balance returns slowly. Inside the walls, people begin orienting themselves toward the coming day without imagining it fully. Tasks are remembered, not planned. Anticipation stays muted. The city prefers to wake without expectation. This restraint has served it well. Alexandria knows ambition can wait. It always does. The humor lingers, dry and barely noticeable. A city capable of monumental thought begins its day by blinking quietly, unsure whether it is worth announcing its return to consciousness. It usually decides it is not. Lamps that guided without promising arrival prepare to withdraw. They have done their work. Their continued presence would suggest distrust. Alexandria thanks them by letting them fade. Walls that remembered the night prepare to forget it. Memory remains, but attention shifts. The city does not cling to darkness. It releases it carefully. Somewhere, a bird adjusts on stone. Not a call, just movement. The city notices and lets it pass. The harbor performs one last unintentional count. Everything still present, everything intact. The night has kept its promises. The city does not need to say so. People begin to rise unevenly, not together, not with coordination, individually, carefully. Alexandria allows this disorder. Order will emerge on its own once noise returns. The city remains calm through this transition. It does not congratulate itself. It does not reflect. Reflection belongs to historians, not functioning places. Streets will fill soon, voices will rise, trade will resume. None of this feels urgent yet. Night has left behind a residue of restraint that will linger into the day. Alexandria carries this restraint unconsciously. It will forget where it learned it. That is fine. The city does not mark the end of night because it never considered the night separate from itself. It was simply another mode of operation. Darkness steps aside without protest. It has no need to linger. It was never in control. Daylight will arrive gradually, doing what it always does. Alexandria does not prepare speeches for it. It prepares doors, bread, routine. The night recedes not because it is chased away, but because it has finished its work. It lowered volume. It reduced ambition. It confirmed continuity. Nothing more is required. People breathe more fully now. Muscles prepare for effort. Thoughts line up without urgency. The city moves toward activity without enthusiasm or resistance. Alexandria does not awaken reborn. It does not renew itself. It does not declare restoration. It continues. The night dissolves into the morning without apology, leaving behind a city that knows how to exist quietly long after the need for quiet has passed.